Congressman Bryan Steil is up next, but first, some more news. After some delay, the Catholics for Trump coalition launched this week. A rally in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, originally scheduled for March 19th, was postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic. Mercedes Schlapp, the senior advisor for strategic communications for the Trump campaign, said in a statement, quote, "President Trump is a steadfast supporter of the Catholic community and has delivered on his promises." She went on to tout everything from his appointment of conservative judges to his religious liberty record to stopping money going to Planned Parenthood. Initially skeptical of candidate Trump in 2016, the president won the vote of self-identified Catholics by a margin of 52% to 45%. And just last week, Congress passed the coronavirus stimulus bill, the largest aid package in American history. It provides essential relief to American workers in an economy reeling from the COVID-19 crisis. The $2 trillion stimulus bill provides direct payments to the American people and emergency loans, but it also did something else. The bill included outrageous expenditures of hundreds of millions of dollars for items totally unrelated to the pandemic. Joining me now to discuss how some of these questionable items remained in the bill, his proposal to rescind the appropriation made to the Kennedy Center, and much more, a member of the House Financial Services Committee, Congressman Bryan Steil of Wisconsin. Congressman, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Congressman Steil, was there much argument in the House over this Kennedy Center grant, this $25 million grant, on top of the $44 million plus they already receive annually?
So we didn't get to bring forth any amendments at all on the CARES Act. So we're spending $2 trillion. It was an up or down vote. Americans were in need. We needed to make sure we're protecting people who needed to cover their rent, cover their mortgage, pay their grocery bills, make sure that our medical professionals had the resources they need to be able to fight the virus. But buried inside this was a pet project, the $25 million for the Kennedy Center. I spoke about it on the House floor the day we passed this last Friday. But now, after we see what the Kennedy Center did by laying people off, we're gaining attention for the bill that I introduced.
Yeah, and let's tell people about that. Deborah Rutter, who's the director at the Kennedy Center, she is not paying the musicians there, the National Symphony Orchestra, despite the $25 million in welfare. So the question is, the orchestra is told they're going to lose their health care. And we're talking about a group, the Kennedy Center, that's sitting on a $100 million endowment. Wasn't the relief money supposed to or purportedly set aside for workers?
Well, what's so appalling is the Kennedy Center got to jump to the front of the line. They got a sweetheart deal that no other entity got. And so they got a specific line item in the bill for $25 million. And then after they get that, they go and lay off their employees. And exactly what you said, they got to be looking for additional resources from themselves before they come for a sweetheart deal from the federal government.
It's amazing to me. I mean, with the endowment that they group and the annual that they receive and the annual appropriation from the federal government, how much do they get each year, Congressman? My calculation, it looks upwards of $44 million, but there's so many grants and so many little honeypots, it's hard to keep track.
It's hard to keep track, but what was so appalling is in a bill that was put together to address the coronavirus, to make sure that we're protecting workers who've fallen on hard times, to make sure nurses and doctors have protective equipment. They were able to get a line item, a sweetheart deal to get to the front of the line for the Kennedy Center, a theater in Washington, D.C. People here in Wisconsin who are struggling with the coronavirus are rightfully upset, and that's why we're working to take this money back.
Well, look, I loved the Kennedy Center, but I lived in Northern Virginia. But why should the rest of the country finance our theater going? It's ridiculous. These are also, by the way, some of the most expensive and wealthy counties in America around D.C. They can afford their own theater tickets. They don't need welfare. Here's my question. You have a bill, or you're proposing a bill, that would rescind this money from the Kennedy Center. How much support are you receiving, and is it all from Republicans?
As we got to the start of this week and people realized what the Kennedy Center did after they got the $25 million, we started getting phone calls left and right of people wanting to sign up. So far, it's been all Republicans, but I look at this, there's no reason this should be partisan. This is an issue where one entity got a sweetheart deal. They got to cut the line in front of everybody else. This is a moment where we should band together and take this money back.
Yep. I want to run through some of the other organizations that were funded under, remember, a coronavirus relief bill. $10 billion for international development, $350 million for refugee resettlement, $93 million for Congress, $25 million of which is for salaries and expenses, $75 million for PBS and NPR, $75 million for the National Foundation on the Arts and Humanities, $75 million for the National Endowment for the Humanities, $50 million for the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and $7,500,000 for the Smithsonian Institution. Now, many of these are already federally run, federally financed programs, Congressman. That's almost $12 billion listed there. Why are you focusing all your attention on rescinding the money from the Kennedy Center? Shouldn't these other groups be rescinded as well? These other expenditures?
No. I'm all about looking at every single one of them. This bill was directly at the Kennedy Center. I am all about continuing that we are advocates for taxpayers. This money should be going to either fight the coronavirus, protect workers who are laid off, or back in taxpayers' pockets. I think we're just beginning the process of going back and looking at what happens when a $2 trillion bill gets rushed through. We need to be focused in to make sure that this money is well spent to protect workers, fight the coronavirus, or otherwise should be in taxpayers' pockets.
Now, President Trump said this about the next coronavirus relief bill, which I can hardly believe we're talking about. Watch.
We have a zero interest rate, essentially. And I said, wouldn't this be a great time to borrow money at zero interest rate and really build our infrastructure like we can do it?
Now, Congressman, Speaker Pelosi on Monday told reporters in a conference call that she's already looking at a new round of coronavirus relief legislation, but Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell does not seem to be in much of a hurry to start Phase 4.
Let's see how things are going and respond accordingly, but I'm not going to allow this to be an opportunity for the Democrats to achieve unrelated policy items that they would not otherwise be able to pass.
Congressman, you serve on the Financial Services Committee. The stimulus package is $2 trillion, and the expectation is the economy will recover from this setback due to the coronavirus. Can we afford another $2 trillion worth of spending on coronavirus relief?
We need to make sure that any money we spend is fact-driven, that it's addressing the problems that we're actually having and not funding sweetheart deals. And so my concern is in this fourth coronavirus package is that Nancy Pelosi is going to walk in with a wish list of projects that she's going to want to spend on that is not going to be related to workers that are suffering, not going to be related to actually fighting the coronavirus for our doctors and our nurses on the front lines. And that's my biggest concern.
Speaker Pelosi has appointed her own task force, her House Select Committee on the coronavirus crisis. Now, she claims it's going to be bipartisan and that its goal will be, and I'm going to read this, she wants to make sure that the money that's already been spent and the money to be spent will be going to working families struggling to pay rent. The panel will root out waste, fraud, and abuse. Do you believe that?
You know, it's hard to think that they're going to weed out waste, fraud, and abuse. Nancy Pelosi flew back to Washington, D.C. to insert special projects into the third coronavirus bill that took days to negotiate back out. And we still ended up with things like the Kennedy Center funding. So I'm very concerned of what Nancy Pelosi is going to try to get into any future bills. We should read them carefully. This is a time where we need to be making sure we're protecting workers, we're fighting the coronavirus. This should not be an opportunity for people to put in their special pet projects that get to the front of the line.
What do you say to those, Congressman? I'm going to leave you with this. They say Republicans got $25 billion in grants. They got $25 billion in loans to the airline industry, a series of regulatory changes sought by the banking industry. So the Democrats got a couple of sweetheart deals and money for the Kennedy Center. That's the price of Democratic support for this bill.
That's not the way that we should be doing. That's politics as usual. And that's what makes people so frustrated at home here who are actually suffering the impacts of the coronavirus. They're suffering from losing jobs. They're suffering from being sick or having loved ones who are sick. And that is what makes people sick when they hear that that's the politics as usual in Washington, we need to be fact-driven. We need to fight the virus. We need to protect workers. But this is not a time for sweetheart deals.
Congressman Steil, the Democratic National Committee has come out. They've announced they are delaying their national convention till August. Your thoughts on should the Republicans respond in kind, or is this an effort to use, if you will, the coronavirus pandemic to distort or shift our election season and the pending presidential election?
Yeah, I don't know what was in the thought making of the Democratic leaders who are shifting the date of their convention. But I do know when we get to the end of this and we look and we say, who do we want to be the leader for the next 4 years? The track record of President Trump and the disastrous policies that the Democrats are putting forward is going to make that decision very clear for people, regardless of when the Democrats actually hold their convention.
Congressman, I thank you so much for being with us. We'll check in with you as the days go on.
Thanks for having me on.
Be safe.